He was my uncle because he married my aunt. So when the papers brought the news of his death, I felt that some part of me had died too. I was boarding then at a big girls' college in Manila. I tried to be brave while I read that my uncle had actually been the last of a distinct school of Filipino poets. The girls hurried over me to see what had happened. I could only point to them the item on the front page. Once I wrote a poem entitled "The Rose Was Not So Fair, O Alma Mater," was captioned by the niece of the late beloved Filipino poet. My aunt used to relate that when uncle was sober, he always tried to make up for his past sins. One day, my aunt had more than she could bear, and when he was really drunk, he tied his chair with a strong rope to teach him a lesson. She never saw him drunk again, for as soon as he was able to, he walked out the door and never came back. I was very little at that time, but I remembered that shortly after he went away, my aunt put me in a car and sent me to his hotel with a letter from her. Uncle ushered me into his room very formally and prepared a special kind of lemonade for the two of us. It was unlike any lemonade I had ever tasted. To my surprise, as I sipped solemnly at my glass, I found myself reporting all details of my aunt's health, including the number of crabs she ate for lunch, and that she is getting fatter and fatter. Uncle smiled and drew some poems from his desk and instructed me to give them to my aunt. Aunt Sophia was so pleased with the poems that she kissed me. She asked me to say ha, ha, and when I did, she took me to the sink and began to wash the inside of my mouth with soap and water. I never got a taste of Uncle's lemonade. It began to be a habit with Aunt Sophia to drop in, and the topic of the conversation was always the latest low on Uncle's state of misery. It gave Aunt Sophia profound satisfaction when friends relate to her that Uncle is getting thinner, which proved conclusively that he was suffering as a result of the separation. When I was about 11, there began to be a difference. Every time I came into the room when Mama and Aunt Sophia were holding conference, the talk would suddenly be switched to Spanish. Uncle was not anymore the topic. It was a woman by the name of Esa, or so I thought she was called. Later I began to appreciate the subtlety of the Spanish La Mujer Esa. And so I learned about the woman. She was young, accomplished, a woman of means, because the woman brazenly followed Uncle everywhere, calling herself his wife. A confusing situation ensued. There was no way of whether they referred to my aunt or to the woman. One day in school, all the girls were asked to come down to the lecture room. Uncle was to read some of his poems. Up in my room, I stopped to fasten a pink ribbon to my hair, thinking the dear niece was to be presented to the uncle she had not seen for so long. My musings were interrupted, however, when a girl came up and excitedly bubbled, "I saw your uncle and aunt. I never thought she was young and so very modern." I couldn't go down after all. I was indisposed. It became more complicated when Uncle died. I was puzzling over who was to be the official widow at his funeral. There were only a few people present when I arrived at the chapel. Aunt Sophia was sitting in one of the front pews at the right section of the chapel. She had on a black and white print which managed to display its full yardage over the seat. Across the aisle from her was a very slight woman in her early 30s, who was dressed in a dramatic black outfit. I knew of a sudden that she was the woman. A young man, obviously a brother or nephew, was with her. The friends of the poet began to come. The men went straight to the woman, and the women went to Aunt Sophia. Toward lunchtime, it became obvious that neither my aunt nor the woman wished to leave ahead of the other. I could appreciate my aunt's delicadeza, but I got hungry. I called a taxi and told her that it was at the door with the meter on. We made up for leaving ahead of the woman by getting back to the chapel early. Aunt Sophia looked relieved when she saw that the left side of the chapel was empty. But at about 3, the woman arrived, and I perceived at once that there was a difference in her appearance.
So, you want to put me in a corner, do you? You think perhaps you can bully me out of it?
Shh, please don't create a scene.
It's you who were creating a scene. Did you come here purposely to start one? We're only trying to make you see a reason. If you think of the dead at all, let's see who has the reason. I understand you want me to live, isn't it? Now that he is dead and cannot speak for me. You think I should quietly hide in a corner? Let me ask you this. During the war, when the poet was hard up, do you suppose I deserted him? Do you think we sold when he did not make money? When he was ill, who was it who stayed at his side? Who took care of him during all those months? And who peddled his books and poems to the publishers so that he could pay for the hospital and doctor's bills? Did any of you come to him then? Let me ask you that. Now that he is dead, you want me to leave his side so that you and the vieja can have the honors and have your picture taken with the president?
For just make her stop it. Somebody, please stop her mouth.
Now you listen, you scandalous woman. We don't care for the honor. We want the poet to be honored in death, to have a decent and respectable funeral, without scandal. And the least you can do is to leave him in peace and as he lies there.
Yes, you created enough for him to die. That's why we couldn't go to the way he was sick. Because you were there. You shameless bitch.
Alright. You can have him. All that's left of him.